My name's Susan Middleditch. I'm currently the Deputy Secretary for Corporate and Regulatory Services at Victoria Police. That role heads up the majority of the corporate services that any large organisation has. Specifically, I have responsibility for finance and managing our $4 billion budget, our human resources, 22,500 people, all of our investment with government, some regulatory services, and then business services like procurement and those other things that help an organisation and help our frontline police members do what they do every day. So I was doing a very similar role to what I'm doing now. So heading up corporate services for a government entity. I'd come out of an organisation that had really damaged my confidence and had been picked up by this new government department where the CEO had been through Institute of Strategic Leadership and has known Jeff for many years. And I was lucky enough that he was putting all of his executives through this program. So when I first went to the Senior Leadership Program, I sat down with my CEO and said, well, okay, what do you want me to get out of this program? And he said to me, Susan, all I want you to do is go and get back your confidence. It was really interesting because I thought that I was confident. I thought that I'd left this organisation that had damaged me. I'd found a really good organisation that was caring and where I had hit my strides and was doing a great job. And it wasn't until he said that to me and I realised that damage from past organisations can last a little while, and it's not until you actually get away from that and reflect and have people say to you, you're really good at what you do, that I became more confident in my role, in who I was, in what I can do, in my skill set, my strengths, etc. I think that I went in with no real expectations. I didn't know what really to expect. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. I think I went in with the view that my boss sees, I guess, a talent that I haven't tapped into yet, and is willing to invest in me to go and explore and give me a week to go and explore that talent. So I figured that I owed, if nothing else, I owed it to him to actually open myself up for that experience and just go to see, what could be. There was lots of what could be moments in, my first week with the Senior Leadership Program. No, I hadn't done anything like this prior. And the reason for that is because I think the Institute for Strategic Leadership has a very niche offering. There's loads of leadership development programs around. In my experience, there's a lot of leadership development programs that teaches you content, and what I mean by that is teaches you what to do, how to have a difficult conversation, how to manage staff, how to be a leader. What the Institute for Strategic Leadership, in my view, does is it provides you with the insight about yourself, about how to lead a team or how to lead an organisation. And it's a personal journey. Everybody gets out of it something different. And they take away, everyone takes away a different how to be a better version of yourself. Part of my how-to was very much about how I become far less introverted and a little bit more extroverted. My background is a background in accounting and finance, and like many good accountants, we're very happy to sit behind a screen with spreadsheets and numbers and deal with those all day, not so great at dealing with people. And so my how was very much about, that connection with your team, really removing, some of the personal barriers that I had up about, who I was or who I am as a person and what that means for my leadership, and letting people in far enough to connect with me. And so, that was very much, my how-to coming out of that week was, how do I allow myself to be connected with, in a way that is comfortable with a very introverted person? And that's been, we're going back to 2011 here, that's an 11-year journey for me that I still have to take time and go, okay, what do I need to do next to connect with people and allow people to see me, as a human being, and not some sort of, superhuman that nobody else can strive towards. ISL allowed me to understand the differences between introversion and extroversion, but also allowed me to understand that everybody has different preferences, and of course there is a continuum of that. However, what the program also made me realise and allowed me to reflect on was that people want to see me, they want to connect with me as their leader, they want to hear from me, and they want to do that in a very personal way. So coming out of the program, there was a couple of key, things that I took away from that. One was to really try and increase my public speaking and actually putting myself out there to public speak. It was something that I always shied away from. So I took opportunities to public speak. And secondly, it was to, start to share, more about me and more about my family, and enabling those connections to happen. So, talking about my children as little ones, back then, I guess it started to show people that, I did understand, their lives. I did understand the complexities of trying to balance, work and home and whatever else goes on in their lives, and that their deputy secretary is capable of understanding and empathy. Mm-hmm. I've had now an 11-year journey with the Institute for Strategic Leadership on multiple levels. So from my first attendance at SLP, I actually returned and did SLP a second time in 2017, so 2011 and 2017. But apart from my own personal journey, I've actually taken most of my leadership teams now through ISL's Team Dynamic Profiler type process, and I work with them regularly on programs with my leadership team, strategy days with my leadership team, and I also support a number of my staff to go through each of their programs. So Victoria Police now has a commitment with the Institute for Strategic Leadership where we put 3 to 4 people on each of their programs as they come up through the year. And what I've seen from that is a real cohort of people who have gone through the same experience, have an understanding of the process that the Institute puts everybody through in terms of people's profiles, and it gives us a really good understanding of each other. So we can have those conversations about our different approaches to things, or why we might rub each other up the wrong way, in a very open way, and a way that everybody understands. It doesn't mean you still might not rub each other up the wrong way, but at least you understand why you're rubbing one another up the wrong way, and you can bring that back to preferences. And that's been really powerful, for me in my executive teams. And as I say, I've done that now in my last 4 organisations, and it's been an ongoing journey for us. Yeah, everybody asks me about what the difference was between the first time and the second time. And I must admit, I was very hesitant to go the second time. And, Jeff and Gareth, poked me for about 12 months before I actually agreed to do a repeat. The difference for me was that I was in a different stage of my leadership journey and my career. So as I said, the first time that I went in 2011, it was all about confidence and about coming out of an organisation that had left me pretty bruised and battered, and getting back that belief of myself. The second time was just after I'd moved to Melbourne, and so therefore I'd moved jurisdictions. I was coming to the end of a journey in the organisation that I was working for down here, and I really needed to work out what I was going to do next. And so the second time I went, again with the support of this organisation, was very much to sort of just have some time to reflect, to go, okay, this is what the last 6 years has done for me. Where am I going to take it next, and what that next job's going to be? And it was about, 6 or 7 months after the second time I went to SLP, where I got, approached for my current role at Victoria Police. I think the interesting thing is there's always loads of key memories, and one of the reasons why I didn't want to return the second time was I didn't think that it could ever be as good as the first time, because I just had such an amazing time the first time that I went to SLP, and really took away so much from it that I sort of went, I don't know how you're going to top that. The second time, as I said, was different because, I was there for a different reason. I think for me though, one of the, and it's actually a continuing memory, it's not a memory because it's actually a reality. One of the things that I've really valued from both of those is the value and the strength of the syndicate group that you work with. So my 2011 syndicate group was a group of Australians. We still are in contact with one another 11 years later. We tend to get together about once a year and just spend a half a day to a day, catching up and reflecting on our leadership journey and tossing around what our leadership challenges are, and using that syndicate group exactly for the reason that it was set up, to be a safe place where you could share the challenges that you're facing and get some independent advice. The 21st anniversary of ISL is, such an amazing achievement for Jeff. He really did have a vision 21 years ago about what leadership should be, and not just about the what, but about the how. And I think he's really brought out the how in loads of, leaders in Australia and New Zealand and across the world. He should be, extremely proud of what he's built, and the amount of leaders in all sorts of organisations that are doing amazing things. My interactions and ongoing work with ISL is it's such a positive relationship that I have with the organisation, and I've gotten so much out of it individually and for my leadership teams that I must admit I often reflect and go, well, if I didn't have that partnership in place with ISL, I wonder how much harder my job would be. So I do often sit back and sort of think back to those early days that I landed in such a great place with a boss that valued leadership development. And I consider myself very lucky to have been put on the SLP back when I was. But I've also, consider myself very fortunate to work in organisations that allow me to have the flexibility to encourage and support my staff for their own personal development and the personal development of our teams as a whole. And as I said before, I think ISL has such an amazing product in the often crowded leadership development market that that it just brings value to everybody that attends. And I've been able to see that just through growth of, people that I've supported, over the time and where they've ended up, in their careers. So I guess there's probably 2 or 3 key pieces of advice that I'd give people around their next step in a world that's a bit uncertain at present. The first one is to really understand and be confident about what you're good at. You don't have to be good at everything, and nobody's good at everything, but really, understand and acknowledge to yourself that your strengths and what you bring to the next role or what you bring to the current role, because I think that's really important, and that's where your base level of confidence comes from. The second piece of advice is around having a tribe. I call it a tribe of people that are supporters. That could be at a home tribe, that could be a friend's tribe, that could be a work tribe. But in that tribe, when somebody says to you, you'd be really good at doing this, then actually, trust the fact that they're telling you the truth, that they actually think you'd be really good at doing this. So when I talk to my teams, and specifically when I talk publicly to women who are trying to progress their careers, I say to them, if somebody says to you, you'd be really good at doing something, you'd be really good at doing something, and think about taking that opportunity. And then the third piece of advice, which actually I'm going to paraphrase Jeff here, because it was Jeff's advice to me in one of our leadership development programs that I did in a workplace a number of years ago. He said to us as a group, when you're trying to work out what your leadership traits should be, his suggestion was to get out of bed every morning, look in the mirror, and promise yourself that you're going to be the type of boss that you'd like your children to work for.